Fox was the network to first experiment with those elements that would eventually coalesce in our 21st century conception of prestige drama. Before the emergence of mainstream pay cable market, Fox was the first significant challenge to broadcast TV model since the emergence of the Big Three. To get skeptical viewers to tune into an upstart network with fewer shows, fewer stars, and lower budgets than their more established competitors, by the early 90s, Fox had established itself as the place to go for audiences who were younger, more diverse, and all around hipper than the average bear. That meant shows that pushed the boundaries on raunch, quirk, all the stuff the TV critics boiled down to the word edge. One of those edgy shows is a program that pushed the envelope on violent content while also trying to do something that traditional network dramas had largely avoided until that point, telling a serialized story that was self-consciously about something. The X-Files debuted in 1994, 3 years after the fall of the Soviet Union and the same year NAFTA passed, and sought to understand a moment of vanishing frontiers and foreclosed alternatives by casting its gaze to the stars and between the lines. With America, the unquestioned hegemon of a new world order, anxieties about our future drifted inward, and Chris Carter was there to give a shape and narrative to those ambient cultural currents. Fox Mulder and Dana Scully were the proxies for a generation that was coming to terms with the reality of life in a globe-spanning empire where secrets are the currency of power and all the really important decisions seem to be made behind closed doors by aliens, because no human institutions could possibly account for the eerie sense of claustrophobia that accompanied the end of history. If democracy and capitalism were triumphant and the sum of the American experience was simply the sum of our consumer choices, why were we still miserable? What forces operating beyond our ability to perceive them were shaping our lives and our futures? The X-File was the slow-motion nervous breakdown of a godless nation reckoning with the coming of the millennium. Now, I grew up on the X-Files. It's probably one of the very first shows I watched, because I'm old enough to have experienced network television in its last days before, as it was coming into an idea of what prestige TV could be, of quality television. And along with like Homicide: Life on the Street in the early 90s, the show, the one that I was most taken with was X-Files. But X-Files, unlike Homicide, was a cultural phenomenon. It was the defining show of the decade in a lot of ways. And Felix, you, being a little younger than me, did not really watch the X-Files when it was on. So you're watching this for the first time, coming from the other side of that, millennial consciousness inflection point. And I'm wondering how you responded to it as somebody who's seeing it for the first time, really.
Well, I had a little bit of experience watching it as a kid because children and old people are the only people advertising works on.
Yeah, right.
And I saw a trailer for the X-Files movie, and I thought it seemed so fucking cool. I was like 6 or 7, I believe, and I like begged my mom for us to see it. I begged her and begged her and begged her, and she was like, "No, you're 7." But I was just like, I wouldn't stop, and because I was the youngest, I always got what I wanted. So she was like, "Okay, if you can watch one X-Files and you don't get like too scared to go to bed, fine, we'll watch it."
Yeah.
And we watched an episode together, and the episode on that night, the season finale, was home. And I was able to go to bed. It was like, that could be the most fucked up episode of the X-Files.
Oh, for sure. I rewatched that one this week.
It is so fucked up, and it was so like seared in my brain. And I also rewatched it again this week, but I did love it, and I would catch it on and off, but it was just like, I loved it at the most surface level that like a 7 or 8 year old can love it.
Right.
And then, when I got older, they had already invented prestige. Mm-hmm. I could watch Sopranos. I could watch all that shit. I watched more Brotherhood on Showtime than the X-Files growing up.
Oh man, you are a to this day a Brotherhood apologist.
It's a fucking great show. Like, it never got a fair shake.
It's like the Irish Sopranos, right?
It is. It's the Irish Sopranos because they're always killing each other over like $3,000.
Yes.
Yes. Very low stakes.
They never got it together the way that the I-Ties did.
Yeah. But going back and watching it, I wish I had rewatched it earlier because there was so much stuff in the original that I would never get, like, as a little kid.
Right.
And I love this. What you said about how it was, there are a lot of things I want to talk about with the characteristic of the show, but about how it was the only like cultural phenomenon from the 90s that I felt like wasn't doing the thing that everything else was doing in the 90s, where it's like, all right, well, we're at the end of history. We're balancing the budget deficit. The Soviet Union's over. We have NAFTA. All right.
They really did believe that we were one race-swapped movie with John Travolta away from achieving racial harmony.
Every movie in the 90s was about a black and white guy getting surgery to change places.
Yep.
Like, if you don't, there were a lot.
And it was all going to solve. It was going to solve racism.
Yeah.
Everything was going to go great. We were good.
Yeah, it was like, or like it was that, or it was just like sort of flaccid culture ennui, or it was stuff like Clueless. That was like, it was just in a world without a point, kind of.
Yeah.
It was just like, hey, what are these types of people doing? Or it was the heyday. It was the rebirth of the teen movie.
Yes.
Like, yeah. Because it was like, because that was a big thing in the 90s, was suburban parents and newly enriched parents, the boomers, freaking out about their kids having sex and doing drugs.
Oh,
so
hell
everything. Yeah. Like Traffic. I call these movies like Oxfam movies, because they remind me of like the Oxfam viral ads that they would have, where it's like every 37 seconds, a 15-year-old girl overdoses on heroin for the first time. Just that 90s style, like Free Tibet.
Totally.
We're out of activism, so here's a new thing aesthetic where it's very sepia toned.
Yeah.
And the X-Files was the only thing from that time where it wasn't just sort of like Victorian freak out of the surplus. It was like, no, like they won. The deep state won.
Yep.
Like we're living in the deep state's world. And it's like, it is like very ahead of it. Like as I interpreted it, like I haven't seen the whole thing, but I watched a lot this week. As I interpret it, it's that the deep state is evil.
Yeah.
Like that's like the main thrust of it.
Yeah. It is the for all of the, because, it is that hybrid show, because it is a mixture of a grand overarching narrative, but it's almost all plot. It's not really character driven the way that later prestige shows would be. But it's also broken up with a lot of Monster of the Week episodes with self-contained stories. And some of them very self-conscious and gimmicky also. But all of them refract around a central a conception and understanding of the world that, like, even on its surface as just a text, is our governing institutions have been compromised at a deep level by a fundamentally alien parasitic force that countermands all of our democratic pretensions.
Yeah, like I think what the 90s had a ton of? It was movies about like young, hip, liberal CIA agents.
Oh, yeah.
Or black ops officers. Like The Siege and shit. Yeah. There was so much shit about that where it was like some like CIA. All the guys who are the bad guys in 80s movies, the liberal cucks who work for the police department or the CIA, they're the hero. And they're negotiating with some Muslim guy and being like, America apologizes.
Yeah, like that asshole sniveling bitch cop that Cobra punches out. It's like, why didn't you try to reason with the murder cult? He's the hero of 90s movies.
Yeah. And it was just like, it was so evil because it was like, that was like the first shades of sort of pink washing and like Idpol washing the security state, where it's like, no, it's the 90s. All these people are cool now.
Yeah.
They're Denzel Washington. And the X-Files, like it is literally about FBI agents, but they're constantly at odds with the FBI and the deep state.
Yeah.
And like the point is like, no, it doesn't matter what's on the edifice of this. Like this institution is evil and literally compromised by a parasitic force.
Yeah. It's come to think of it, the X-Files might be one of the only shows that could ever be said to feature cop protagonists that's not propaganda, because what does Mulder and Scully actually do at the FBI? It is investigate the government and shoot monsters.
Yes. No. Yeah. They never just shoot some hapless human. I mean, sometimes they do, but it's mostly they're fighting like vampires.
They're fighting vampires and evil. Like they don't find like a mentally challenged alien and like try to talk them into probing somebody and then shoot them so that they can raise their budgets.
Yeah, no, it's like it is far leftier than The Wire ever was. Ever.
Honestly,
like,
yes, because it goes deeper. It goes deeper, and it also, I mean, you could argue that like anything that's premised on conspiracy is reactionary, but it's the same. It's reactionary. All narratives is reactionary because they all end up reinforcing the status quo because things are resolved at the end of them. It's as reactionary as any other narrative form, and conspiracy theory is by imagining that like you can get the truth to people that changes things. Like that's not true, but it is at its base powered by this notion that if people knew the truth, they would realize that this is an awful system that is alien to us and must be changed. The Wire gets you to the deeper truth that, oh, this is our lot because we are human and therefore our institutions are human and cannot really be changed.
Yeah. It's, I mean, it has, I wouldn't say the X-Files has like totally coherent politics, and that's not really
No,
the
of course
point
not. No, the 90s was the decade where everyone's just sort of like I mean, Chris Carter was, I believe, the creator of the show, who's like he was the show running like superstar. He was the first one really, in many ways.
Yeah.
Like before even Botchko with NYPD Blue, and certainly like David Chase. He had that. He was like on the cover of magazines and shit. Like he was considered like sort of the Spielberg of TV, and he was like a California surfer dipshit, and therefore the show has California surfer dipshit politics.
Exactly. Like the '90s was like part of this was just like the way that this was just the consequence of the left being completely obliterated through the '80s and the DLC and the '90s, but it was like a weird grab bag of shit.
Yeah.
Like no one knew, like you would hear a self-proclaimed like communist or anarchist talk about the national debt. Like it was just like, because it was just like you had to do like a grab bag of everything that was bad.
Yeah. Yes.
And
because the debt was a serious problem there, because there were because times were happy, which is when you have to get rid of that money somehow. So you'll balance the budget. So you just do austerity covered by prosperity.
Yeah. And it was, like to be, if you're listening to this now and you're like 25, if you were born 10 to 20 years earlier and you were in your same beliefs now, you would be talking about NAFTA. You would be talking about free trade agreements and interventionism, just like we do now. But you would also have some weird shit like, you would think there are still POWs in Vietnam that we have to find, or like you'd be really you'd think like consumerism is the main problem.
Oh God, like, yes, like people need to stop buying shit all the time.
Yeah, but I honestly I don't think I would like the X-Files as much if it had coherent politics. Because that's a death. That's death, especially to something like television, which it's like over time, like a coherent politics becomes redundant because like. You know, how much one-to-one allegory can a story to handle? You need to break it up, and the way to break it up is to have it kind of come from different angles. Yeah, if you're not breaking it up, you might as well just write a pamphlet and hand it out in the street. You might as well just become a fucking Spartacist.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the fact that it is this weird grab bag is like it gives them way more narrative freedom, and you get the goofy, sort of campy, really funny episodes like Bad Blood. You get the shit about like JFK being an alien. Like you get so much awesome shit. But it also like it made me remember. I know everyone says remember the 90s, remember GAC, remember fucking Fruit Roll-Ups, but it actually made me remember some of the feeling of the late 90s.
Yeah.
Of just being like a chicken with your head in the dirt politically, just running around, just like what the fuck is going on? Yep. And it's like I don't think you can have like if Mulder was like, I don't know what people would want, like quoting Kropotkin or some dumb bullshit. It would be like, well, no, that's like the point is Mulder and Scully. It's the point of their characters isn't that they know everything. It's that they come in there with these two modes of expertise, Scully with a scientific one and Mulder with, I mean, his almost a Socratic thing where it's like, anyone could be an alien.
Yeah.
Anyone could be an alien or a fucking cryptic cryptid, Bigfoot could be here. Let's figure it out. And that's the narrative strength of the show, is what they don't know.
Yeah.
What they don't know could fill 11 seasons, and it did.
Yeah, and the other the incoherence relatively of like the politics, it speaks to the collaborative nature really of television, because there was Chris Carter there as sort of the gray eminence of that show, but it also had a number of writers who over time established very strong individual authorial voices within the show. Like you can tell, like real X-Files heads know the difference between like the Glenn Wong episodes. Vince Gilligan wrote on the show. There were a bunch of writers who got sort of reputations, which was incredibly rare for series writers at the time. And what that meant was you got incoherent politics, and and just sort of as interestingly and vitally, you have different really attempts at genre. Like it was overall sort of a horror thriller, but individual episodes, because they were able to break up the narrative with unique stories that just took an hour, had different modes of expression, like different genres. Like Home, the episode you talked about, is like a straight gothic horror.
Yes.
And then you've got a number of them, like the Freak Show episode with the circus, were basically comedies. And then they had gimmick episodes with like the one that was supposedly one uncut shot around like the Lusitania or something, like a ghost boat. And then a couple that David Duchovny fucking directed. It had a variety of like approach and aesthetics that is really completely missing nowadays. Like shows, because of how like strictly serialized shows are and how connected they are to character development, it means that they can't really break out of the box as much. Like the closest one I can think of is something like Fargo, but even then it's in a much, much narrower range of expression. Like nothing, they've never done a comedy, like a straight comedy episode the way that the X-Files did.
Yeah, and I like, because things are so genre confined now, and not just genre confined, but stylistically confined. Like, no episode of like Fringe looks different than the other one.
Yep.
Really.
Yeah.
The strange thing is that's outsourced to like psychotic online fan communities.
Yes.
Like that's like okay, so they won't show you.
You're right. Fucking fan art is where all like the interesting interactions with the material take place.
Right. Like they're not going to give you like some bullshit show like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or whatever. If you watch that, they're not just gonna like do 3 episodes where it's just like completely out of the genre and like not even really like canon, and just like it totally its own thing. So you have to like you have to buy a tablet and like draw Doctor Who fucking like the Hulk. Like it's like that's like the only way. And because you're an untrained professional, it will be something disgusting. Like Sonic is crawling up like one of the women's assholes.
That's how you get the magic.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. I wonder if that'll be the new spec scripts. Like as the Zoomers come to run studios, like you send a drawing of like Captain America sucking off Knuckles' cock, and he's like, "No, this kid's got some good ideas."
Oh man, and I think like one of the reasons they can is because they were able to do that on the X-Files because there were no expectations yet. Like the X-Files was a big hit show that didn't carry with it like these critical requirements. Like they were able to take a swing at things and change it up without fear that there's going to be some like backlash against some like critical consensus, because it didn't have to appeal that way. It could appeal on the strength of its genre, its narrative, its hunky leading people and their wonderful chemistry, the cool action scenes and special effects and shit. Like they weren't reliant on like a sort of a chorus of critical affirmation to give like adults permission to watch it. Everybody watched it because it was fun.
Yeah, it was fun, but it also like hit emotionally. Like you cared about Mulder finding his sister.
Yeah.
You cared about Scully and her and like first her infertility and then coming to be a mother. You cared about, like, you wanted to know, the lore of the cigarette smoking man, and you did learn it.
Yeah.
You did learn the lore.
Yeah.
By the way, finally enough, the lore episodes are called My Struggle. Which now Scarred had not been invented yet.
Yeah.
So I think it's Carter
else.
explicitly saying the deep state are Nazis.
Yeah. There's also an episode of the show called Paperclip, which deals with alien infiltration in the government.
Yeah. Well, I do think there is an argument to be made that a lot of the colonist alien analogs that's a stand-in for Nazis.
Yeah.
And I don't think Carter could talk your ear off about Gladio or Paperclip, but I think he has like a California surfer with good instincts, basic knowledge that yes, we've collaborated with Nazis post-war, and the Cold War consensus was built on rehabilitated Nazis everywhere.
Yeah. Oops, our bad.
Yeah. But everything about the X-Files, like everything from what I've watched and what I remember, and then going back, is it is the perfect. I mean, obviously, there's some episodes that miss. Like, there's what's the one where like the black baseball player is an alien?
God. That's
like
one of the
so
ones.
90s fringe.
That's the one of the ones that David Duchovny directed. His
His
record is pretty bad. I don't think he really directed any good episodes. I remember another one he directed that was like about old Hollywood, and there's like dancing ghosts. He really leaned on to schmaltz.
Yeah, that was like that. The alien episode was like very deep 90s cringe. Like if you're a very young person and you were even born in 2000 and you want to know what it's like, that's what it was like.
Yeah.
That was,
That's,
and people thought that was cool.
Oh God. Yeah. It's like, oh God. It was soy before soy was invented.
Yeah. But it is but allowing for those, and you're going to get those in any show, especially one that runs for as long as this did. The levels were perfect because think about now, one of the biggest problems with TV, all media like this specifically, media that's supposed to be like sort of couched in sci-fi or fantasy or these classic like nerd genres, is they're drowning in postmodernism.
Mm-hmm.
Like like every fucking Avengers movie, what happens? It's like there's like a dialogue breakdown where it's like they're doing the classic trailer moment where they're like, we have to have a plan, and then some guy pipes up, I thought I was the guy with the plan. Is this going to be a whole thing? And it just, or like sort of breaking of the fourth wall, or like weird like sort of safe sense of irony. Everything is like too postmodern now. But the X-Files, it was not the first like postmodern TV series. A lot of shows had stuff like that. Like arguably that could be Twin Peaks, that could be a lot of things. But it was definitely the biggest, the most successful.
Yeah.
And it
sure.
showed people a huge proof of concept for it.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, it did, before there was Prestige, it had these Prestige elements. And it showed you could do that in a network. I mean, Fox kind of did, they made the blueprint for the modern age, which sounds like an indictment of what they would buy and run at the time. But really, it's not. They sort of did it before it was the algorithm.
Yeah. And I honestly think that the reason for that is because, we think of Fox as one of the networks, but Fox is the youngest network. Mm-hmm. Fox came on the air in 1986 as a fourth network to challenge ABC, CBS, and NBC, which had been established since like the 40s and which had dominated television that entire time. And the cable also emerged in the 80s. But that was a very slow process of it gaining market share and subscribers. It wasn't really in any way a real competition to the networks. But Fox, by being able to secure a broadcast channel and sign affiliates up across the country, was the first alternative to television as it had sort of congealed into being by the process of broadcasting to the great middle of America for the past 40 years. And when Fox emerged, its challenge was the same as cable's would be, which is, what can I give them that they can't get for free? Or in their case, what can I give them that they can't get from networks that had way bigger budgets, had way more shows, had established stars? How do we get people into the habit of watching us and thinking and expecting the same level of entertainment? And the answer was things like raunch, You know, you had and explicit content, like Married with Children, which is like a parody of family TV shows with all the horniness, like Crank to 11 and crudeness and stuff like that. And like that's where reality shows really premiered, like cheap exploitative stuff. And then at the drama side, it made them one of the first to really explore, okay, can we get people with something beyond, you know, just a standard people going to work and what happens to them at work narrative, something with that has like that is trying to say something more broadly and that is using a serialized narrative to do it. And so it makes sense that they were the ones who sort of helped drive that process, because when cable came along later, it had essentially the same challenge as Fox.
Yeah. And it's something that, you know, I feel like I'm repeating myself here, but that makes me worried about the future of media, because it's not exactly easy to break into the network TV business, but I think we have the opposite problem now. There's too much. If something new, I feel like every week there's a new thing with actual money behind it, saying the things that they're doing, the things that Fox was doing in the 90s.
Yeah.
Hey, we're offering something totally different. Hey, blah, blah, blah. I mean, even they're not any of the time. Like Quibi, the only thing I can get with Quibi is like, I mean, get that. Like,
the thing you're getting here, you can't get anywhere else, is that it's 10 minutes long.
Yeah, it's 10 minutes long and the most difficult to watch out of any of it.
It's because it's for your phone.
Yeah.
God, that's just so perfect. The way, oh, God. Like, we talk, like, there is an economic determinism that sort of drives the changes in our broader cultural, you know, production. But there's also a lot of just embedded human stupidity and short-sightedness that tends to accrue to people at the top who get completely out of touch and don't understand as things are changing. Like the way Thomas Kuhn said that each scientific revolution is, you know, one funeral at a time. Like you've got Jeffrey Katzenberg, this old fuck, going, the kids, they like watching these short videos. Well, what if Kevin Hart was in them? It's like, they're watching them and they're watching them on their phone because that's just some person. It's some BPD girl in her bedroom drinking from a water bottle and pretending that she's in the Holocaust. It's not. It's like if Natalie Portman's doing that, she should be like on the big screen and acting because she's a fucking movie star. Like these things are distinct things. And he goes, no. The kids like it short, so we'll give it to them short on their phones because they like looking at it. It's like maybe these kids, they have different, like they have a completely different understanding of what entertainment is. And that as a result, maybe, frankly, you can't market to them. And you sure shit can't market to them that way. You should probably just like focus on the people who are still consuming conventional programming because there's, you know, maybe as they get older, they'll want narrative. They won't have their brain scrambled. But for right now, you might not want to put that, what was it, like how many billions of dollars did they throw
like
out
$3 billion at least.
To chase after an audience that was never after what they could sell in any sense.
They were they tailor-made a product for nobody. And that's what all of these are. Like we're in such a dark place in the media landscape because I don't feel like anyone except for the platform owners know what the actual numbers are. Like, you know, when Netflix is like, 150 billion people watched The Queen's Gambit. No, they didn't.
No, they did not.
I don't know how many did.
You know what happened?
Probably a lot.
150 million people. All right. So I would say there was a good chunk of people who watched it. Maybe even say like 50. Because there was a big spike there's apparently been a big spike in searches about chess and purchases of chess sets. So the book is going up on the bestseller lists after 40 years. It's like, okay. But I'd say a good 100 million of those are people who had Netflix on and they just didn't turn off the fucking thing when it's auto played.
Yeah.
And then they like turned it off like 5 minutes in and Netflix has decided because they can decide because they don't release their numbers. They just tell us what their numbers tell them, which how are they allowed to do that? How is that not mark-to-market accounting, by the way? They are a publicly traded company. Is that not fucking fraud on the Enron level to have them have a black box where they could make up viewer numbers? Since that's the metric for like how viable this thing is as a fucking platform?
I feel like we are in for I don't know if it's big enough to cause an entire recession, but I do believe we're in for a huge market correction on all media.
Oh, yeah.
Because everything, like, think about the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of jobs that are intrinsically linked to Google AdSense.
Oh, God. Yep.
Do you think Google ads work?
No.
Yeah, no, they don't. I don't think they do either.
No.
I think some people click on them. I don't think the amount of money going into the system justifies it. I don't really believe streaming platforms numbers that they give. I don't think we've seen enough what's actually under the hood.
Yeah.
In the new media world, and I think we're due for just. I mean, nothing good will come out of the.
No,
like,
that's the thing. It'll be different, but but worse. That's the direction everything goes.
Yeah, it will be two companies who own everything instead of three.
Yeah, we'll have streaming services, but it'll be fewer. Like I would say, it'll probably be like Amazon Plus, Amazon Prime, and then the whole Disney, like whatever they end up being, because they already own Hulu. So maybe they buy out Netflix or something.
It could just be Disney. Like couldn't you see that? Just like Disney, think about how cheap Congress is. Think about how cheap the FTC is. Where you could just argue that it's not a monopoly.
Yeah.
They'd be like, yeah, fuck it. What?
Yeah.
Telecoms did that. Telecoms did that for a fucking penny.
Yeah. It's like, hey, it's the consumer. Look, they're still watching it. It's the consumer. The consumers are happy, and that's the only metric of antitrust is whether it impacts the consumer experience. And you're getting 500 Marvel movies, aren't you? What could you complain about? What could you possibly have a problem with this media landscape? I guess like it could end up being one if like Amazon if Disney decides to like fight Amazon over the concept of producing content. And then the Amazon loses and says, all right, fine, we'll just be the platform and you will be the content. But honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they end up, they'll end up together at some point, right? Yeah. Like Disney and Amazon will, if not merge, be at like a level of revenue functionally identical to one another.
Yeah. And that's a very dark future because, everyone makes things on the algorithm now, but God damn it, imagine a world with no FX.
Yeah.
There are these little beacons of light we have in the media landscape. Like, just the few places that will actually attempt to do something somewhat interesting, even if it's derivative. Disney's not going to make, like, the Mayans. I know the Mayans are great, but God damn it, it's fucking different than most things. I mean, yeah, HBO greenlights a lot of bullshit, but... True Detective Season 1 is not like the most amazing thing I've ever seen. I don't think Disney or any of its subsidiaries would make that.
Yeah.
I don't think they would ever make anything like that fun to watch.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. It comes down to how fun is it because is it like a novel experience for what TV is?
Yeah.
It's nothing. You're never going to get anything on TV that is novel for media.
Yeah.
TV is the kielbasa of entertainment. It's all. It's not where the best writers go. It's not where the best directors usually go. It's not where the best parts usually are. It's not where any new ideas really are. But you can pack them into this tube and throw enough spices in there that it's delicious, that it's great. Like you watch even the best TV. You watch fucking Sopranos. It's not as good as like, Anna Karenina.
Yeah.
It isn't.
Yeah.
But it's the best fucking kielbasa you ever had. And sometimes you just want to eat that.
Yeah. Give me a fucking kielbasa instead of what we're getting, which will just be more Soylent.
Yeah.
More
it.
Paste.
It's kielbasa versus Soylent. And X-Files is one of the most kielbasas of TV I've ever
Absolutely.
seen.
Oh my God. You get those peppers on there. Oh, you got Eugene Toombs coming out of the grates. Oh my God.
It is. I think like now when I think about the X-Files legacy, there are fragments of it all over because we talked about how they got all the basic elements that people overdo now, and there are elements everywhere. Like, except that one element from the X-Files will be an entire show. Did you like the camp episodes of the X-Files, like the funny episodes? That's now you have American Horror Story.
That's a very good. That's absolutely true. Yes. Oh, 100%. Like the one with fucking Cher.
Yeah. just shoving like entry level camp into like people who live in Burnsville, Minnesota's face. Be like, you like this?
Yep.
Do you like this? And they're like, yes. Do you like this sort of like smoldering interplay and slow burn of Mulder and Scully's platonic then romantic relationship? All right, here's fucking Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Do you like the massive like lore and storyline elements of it? Like here's a billion fucking
Lost
shows.
most amongst them, but tons of them.
It's very sad because all these elements were in this show. They're in the X-Files for what I believe can be the most organic reasons that you can find them in TV. Nothing in TV is ever going to be like organic or pure. It's a bad business with awful people in it. But they were legitimately all in here because the people writing it and producing it and starring in it thought they were cool and fun.
Yeah.
I don't think if someone is setting out to make something with the budget and scale and reach of the X-Files, I don't think like the director is doing it because they think it's fun to do.
I mean, when he got Cary Fukunaga admitting in an interview when he made Maniac that Netflix had an algorithm that not only determined what shows they greenlit, but determined like the content of the shows that they greenlit. That there were narrative elements and story beats that were market tested and were therefore required, and that were non-negotiable, and that he had to deal with. And he just admits it. It's like, obviously all like commercial art is a compromise, but that just seems like a level where you have to just to protect yourself, disinvest emotionally in what you're doing to a degree that must be higher than it was when you felt like you could, make something at least narratively, structurally, and content-wise, forget stories of, standards and practice and whatever, that is your own and not determined by a dang computer.
It's so depressing. It's so fucking depressing. Like, Cary Fukunaga, I'm not going to act like I'm an expert in cinematography. I'm far from it. But I do love how the things he shoots looks. And it's like, do we know if this algorithm even works? We don't.
Yeah.
We don't, because we don't know if any of Netflix's actual internals.
Yeah.
I know a shitload of people subscribe. Obviously, they have a shitload of revenue. But when people say that they have mapped human behavior, and especially human artistic inclination, to an algorithm, I don't trust them. The closest thing, I think the best algorithm today for that sort of thing is Spotify. But you're talking about 3.5 minute long songs.
Yeah.
For an entire TV series, it's this incredible investment in time. And the best series, they don't appeal to people because they're already where those people are at. They cause the people to go to whatever that is.
Yep, exactly. There has to be some challenge, or else it just goes down like Soylent. It goes down without texture. It goes down without resistance. And without any of that, you don't have the internal frisson that makes you have like a response to something that is beyond just soporific. That's beyond just like dumping fentanyl onto your frontal lobe.
Yeah, no, and it's even if we don't get the massive market correction, which I think in some form or another we're due for, I think we're at least culturally going to have the same consequence you would have if you took in 2,000 to 2,500 calories a day on Soylent. You can technically do it. You can do it for a year. You won't die probably, but sooner or later you're going to pay the piper. You're going to shit out a fucking O-ring.
Yeah.
Something's coming out.
Yes.
And I don't know, sooner or later, all the algorithm can really do at Netflix, as far as I can tell from an outsider's perspective, is figure out like the points of identity and the types of characters and the little smidgen of lore you can give people for the maximum relatability.
Essentially demographic. Like, you can break people down by demographic, and your algorithm determines on how well who they are corresponds to what they want to see, and then you just decide that they're the same, and then give them that.
And with Netflix and Hulu and Disney Plus, what they're all doing is it's the gag where someone's doing open brain surgery and they keep pushing the part of the lobe to make the leg kick up.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, it's going to hurt somebody.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, if you keep giving people exactly what you think they want, to the T, no risk, you're going to run out of stuff. You are going to have to micro-target it beyond meaning. Like the future of media could be, without a market correction, those algorithmically generated shirts on Facebook that are like never mess with a Gemini with a half brother who's a nurse.
Yes.
And there will be one micro show for every American.
Yeah. It'll just be a camera on you watching yourself.
Yeah. But I mean, say for that, like, I do think it's unsustainable. You can't live your life the most miserable you can be is living your life doing exactly what you think you want to do all the time.
Oh yeah,
because often you don't know.
Look at the exhibit A for why that drives you insane and ruins your life is Donald Trump.
That's Donald Trump, yeah, and that is the future of American media and Americans.
Yeah,
if we keep going on this way.
Yep. You're either deprived to the point where, you can never have anything you want, in which case your opinion doesn't matter, or you're on the other side of that wall and you just keep getting pandered to, and the lowest common denominator being the only denominator at every level, and it just turns you into a wad of neuroses because it's never gonna. How can you identify what's wrong if you don't know what it is? Because you've never had to push against anything. Nothing's pushed against you.
That'll be the thing. There will be 3 tiers of Americans, right? There will be like a few. It'll be mostly like hereditary upper class, but there will be a few like carefully given out escape rafts for people. So just to show people conceptually, theoretically, it still exists. There's still mobility in this country. Then there will be the middle class iceberg, where every day, every second, every moment, you have less actual quality of life and less actual purchasing power. You are more precarious than, middle class or lower middle class or whatever you want to call it, generations prior. But your solace, one of your pieces of solace, is that you're not the third thing. And the third thing are completely invisible people.
Yep.
Completely invisible people. Uber Eats drivers, people who sanitize the aisles at CVS, people who do all the jobs that you, the middle class or upper class, do not want to see.
Yep.
And the only thing that will exist for the middle class people separating them is that they're not that person, that they're not the invisible people, they're not the people that no one wants to think about or no one even wants to see, and in fact they are tailoring everything so you never see them ever. You don't have to feel bad, you'll never see them. And then entertainment that gives you exactly what you want all the time.
It's okay. Everything else that's bad, but this is okay because this is soothing. It's like the Temple Grandin hug machine she built to keep the cows soothed before they put the captured bolt in their heads.
You will have 150 million Stephen Paddocks. That's what that is.
Paddock every day. Yep.
Everyone is Paddock. 9/11 every day. Everyone is Paddock.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
That's the future.
You've had 30 years of the fucking of the jackpot rolling in, and you never hearing no. Well, everything that matters, everything that isn't fantasy, everything that isn't spectacle, indulgence, and just Skinner box like brain soothing. Everything that's like your life gets worse and worse.
Yeah, your actual health, the fucking Archer Daniels Midland slop you're eating that makes you feel sick and fucking depressed and shitty all the time, your personal relationships, every day, just the idea of having someone in your life just seems like more of a distant thing because your entire day is just fucking answering emails from some other asshole. All of that goes on and gets worse. but like there is, if you're a guy from fucking, you spent 2 summers in Cuyahoga County as a kid, and on your mom's side, there's a aunt who lies about being Cherokee, so you strongly identify with that. There's a show for you. There's a show for you. Yeah, if you went to U Chicago for 2 years, but you dropped out because of like a new made up pain disease, and you've gotten really into like some sort of like a weird mixture of Sufism and Zionism. There's a show for you. There's a show there. Yeah, that'll be it. And then the natural, what they will call death by natural causes, will be just doing a mass shooting.
Yeah, it's like, did he go panic yet? I'd say sometime next week.
And that will be the final invisible job, mass shooting victim.
Oh, I just realized one other element of contemporary fan culture that the X-Files created, basically, was shipping.
Yes!
Mulder and Scully were the ship. I mean, you can say Moonlighting, but one, they eventually did it on Moonlighting, and it ruined the show. And two, that show was really. I remember. Do you even remember Moonlighting?
I am aware of it.
It's basically only it's sort of remembered for the same reason that Bosom Buddies was remembered for, because that was Tom Hanks's show before he became a movie star. That was Bruce Willis's show before he made Die Hard, or he made Die Hard while he was doing it, and it propelled him to stardom. It is a cultural curio, unlike the X-Files. And it's a genre show, which is where fandoms are most concentrated. So Mulder and Scully were the first ship, and they were the first people who got their fans so excited they had to go onto this newly created internet to write about them fucking.
And then they got it, and it didn't ruin. They did it at the end, and I don't think, I watched a large majority of the final season. I don't think it ruined everything, because they were ending it.
Yeah.
They're ending it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they
no, at the end, it should be at the end. Whereas Moonlighting did it right, like while they were still as a show, and then they had nowhere else to go.
Yeah. What do you even do after that?
Yeah.
What do you?
But for like
Moonlighting,
Moonlighting,
I don't even imagine had as strong bad guys of the week.
Oh no, of course. I mean, there's nothing memorable. I mean, no one remembers it, but we remember the X-Files, and remember Scully and Sculder. They would have called it Sculder.
They
would be on Twitter. There'd be Sculder. I'm Sculder gang. We stand. Scully and Mulder spent 10 years, just 10 seasons, just going back and forth, and the whole America they were rooting for those kids, and it was such a perfect stand because they were able to have that duality. You got the pie in the sky guy and the science nerd woman, which is also a nice reflection, reversion of tropes. And
yes,
you got to watch them have a intimate pas de deux across the decade, and then that became a feature that was like incorporated into a lot of genre filmmaking and television specifically, and forced by people from outside of it, like the Sherlock maniacs.
Oh God, that is the most terrifying. Everyone's afraid of like the MAGA guys doing a coup. I have no fear of that. The Sherlock people, though.
Oh God, terrifying.
Sherlock people they'll just bring guns into Congress. Like Sherlock.
They would do it.
Whatever.
If you dare to suggest that Sherlock is straight, they will they will mail a gun. They will mail a bullet to your house.
Yeah. Next one's coming faster.
Next one's coming faster.
Yeah. And it was also like, there was also payoff for that, because they had unbelievable chemistry as co-stars.
Oh, yes.
Which, now, and I got to assume casting choices are also algorithmic now, because why wouldn't they be?
Yep.
I think that's very rare that you get that.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's why more and more they have to sort of import movie stars into TV just to have some star power. Like, because these guys were both working actors who became TV stars from the show, and you don't really see that much anymore. Like, it's essentially background actors and then the movie stars who kind of walk around, and then blurring the lines and creating this new category. But they popped, as the kids say, and I watched the last episode, And they have this I rewatched last episode, I should say, of the original series, and and there's some very beautiful dialogue between the two of them, and like it all wraps the whole thing up. And I should say that it's totally perfect that the X-Files ends with a big trial where Mulder's on trial for murder, and as his defense, he just says that aliens are in control of everything. And
the prospector defense.
Yes, exactly. And what's beautiful about it is one, it gets him a chance to unwind the entire mythology of the show, which before, like, that's how you know it was a pre-Prestige show. Because Lost, by the time Lost had to end, they were able to be like, oh no, we'll make it arty. And the stuff that we don't mention, people will just forget about. And, they're both basically right. It's like blowing sand into the opponent's face in a game of wrestling. A wrestling match. They felt more bound by, okay, we have set this whole thing in motion. We have to fucking deal with it. So they tied it all back up, which is very fitting for a show about conspiracy theories, because the conspiracy theory worldview is premised on an eventual revelation. And so it always has to end in a courtroom. Although it does not end with the aliens being defeated, I should say, which is another thing that makes it very prescient. Did you at all watch the 2-season reboot they did a couple years ago?
No, I think I might. I think I'm gonna I'm gonna do like a Mulder thing of just watching this entire series now, because I'm very into it now, and I think after that I'll do it. It wasn't like, people didn't act like it was like a completely sacrilegious, like it was spitting in the face of it.
No,
right?
People were like, hey, X-Files, because they brought everybody back, and it felt like people were all right with it. But it was not loved when it actually started. Like, they were not in a case where they were in a hole where like there was already audiences sort of crossed arms, kind of waiting to get pissed off. People wanted to like it, but it ended up doing poorly. I think just because the landscape had changed, like the freedom that they'd had was gone. The material by that point had been pretty exhausted. I mean, you'd had 10 episodes, tech seasons, and 2 movies. That they had to get more self-aware and in a post Prestige way, which that's not what not what was good about it.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. It wasn't ever usurped by a better, but it was just like, no, people have overdosed on what you gave us in the first place.
Yeah.
So people have no place for you now, which is very, very sad to think about.
Yep. Yeah. Well, that's why we should not be rebooting all this stuff, because it not only does it show a sign of bankruptcy, even if you could bring back the magic, it wouldn't feel the same, because we're all living in the wake of everything else.
That's why it's going to be sad to watch Saints of Newark.
Oh God, that's such a bad idea. That's such a bad idea. Why are they doing this? What do they think they're going to get across that wasn't got across on that show? Oh God, yeah. You know what? Give me The Sopranos. The thing I really didn't want any of was James Gandolfini or any of the other fucking performers who literally made the show what it was.
Gandolfini, worst part of the show.
Yeah.
D. Falco sucks.
Oh, yeah. Just give me the city give me Italians in Newark.
Yeah.
Give me some of the most annoying people on earth.
I guess, as always, wrapping it up, the only place, again, we have to look forward to is China, because they're not yet done with their imperial arc.
It's true.
So sometimes maybe if they have an accelerated one, we might even get this in 20 years. Like if they have their rise and fall over the course of 20 years, because everything's fast.
Everything's moving so fast, yeah.
If they get to where we were at in the 90s by 2040, which, again, speed of everything. Things are happening faster than ever, as Thomas Friedman says.
Yeah.
There will be a show about people who work in like the Chinese X-Files.
Yes.
Yeah.
Defeating the hopping vampires and the river witches.
Yeah. I mean, it'll just, I think that's the only good future of TV, is just a different country trades off being the monopolar superpower for every 20 years. And for 20 years, they make the only really great culture in the world, and then it's over.
Yeah.
China, China, you're done. It's Turkey's turn. We're gonna watch fucking Turkish Sopranos.
Turkish Sopranos.
Yeah.
That would rule.
I would love that. I would fucking two of my favorite things. Turkey, you're done. It's Iran's time. It's time for Iranian Breaking Bad. Like just everyone gets a turn. Everyone gets a turn. And then when everyone's done being an empire, the sun explodes.
Yep.
And we're done, but we all made the best versions of the best shows.
And what else can you expect from a species than to express itself that way and leave a mark for all of us to remember?
What's that spacecraft that they sent it into deep space with like imprints? Voyager. We'll put all of it on Voyager. X-Files, Chinese X-Files, Turkish X-Files, fucking. We're going to be at the end when we get to like Azerbaijan.
Yeah, right.
But, all their shows, we'll just send it into deep space. The aliens will see it and they'll go, this is what they did.
Yep. And then there will be the Sopranos and Alpha Centauri.
Yeah. It'll go into the galaxy where the Sopranos is. Actually, there probably isn't. There's nothing that cool where the Sopranos is a real thing. It's probably like Arliss. Like they look and like behave.
They all look exactly like Robert Wool, like an entire alien species that looks like Robert Wool.
You go through a